Hi, this is Evan Lewis in New Zealand with some more lathe tips. This is a very useful one if you're turning anything that's very thin, particularly discs like this. If you've ever tried to do this and line up the discs so that the two faces are parallel after you've faced them, it's very tricky. I've tried doing it with a dial gauge, and that's almost impossible because every time you loosen a three-jaw chuck, they just move randomly. I have done it by putting pieces of parallel metal behind the device, and that works quite well. But if you're doing several, this technique is really handy. We'll give you a rundown on how to set this up. It's very simple, really. You've already seen in the pictures what we're going to do. We're going to screw some offset mounts on the front of the chuck. And so here I've already removed the jaws from the chuck and put the chuck on the drill press. I've already marked out the place where I want to drill and tap some holes and center punch them. Now I'm wanting to drill 3 holes in here ready for tapping, but I have to be careful not to drill right down into the scroll. So I measured that's 14 millimeters down to the top plane of the scroll, and so I'm going to drill down to 12 millimeters. I haven't got a line tap for threading it, so I've only got what's really a beginner's tap, no intermediate or line tap. So I'm not going to be able to thread it all the way to 12 millimeters either. So what I'm going to do is I want to drill down. I want to make sure I don't go beyond the 12 millimeter mark. So we'll measure it up. So what I want to do is I've got a ballpoint pen and cut a piece of the tube off it. You know, when you look for a ballpoint pen and you want to write something, you can never find one that writes. You want to find one you want to chop up for this. You want to find one that doesn't write, and there isn't one. They will work. So anyway, I'm going to set it in the chuck such that this much is protruding, and when I've drilled down to 12 millimeters, it won't let me go any further. I've already run this with the small center drill, so they've actually been drilled already. That's a very small one because I wanted the drill I'm using is 1/8 of an inch. The screws I've got are 4 millimeters, and they're recommended 3.3 millimeter, and of course I don't have a 3.3, I have a 3 and a 3.5. So I checked, and an 1/8 inch drill is 3.23 or something like that. So it's pretty close to 3.3. So I'm going to use an 1/8 inch drill. So there we go with the 12 millimeters protruding. Okay, here we go. It's surprisingly soft drilling, so that should be it. 12 millimeters deep. With a handheld tapping handle, it's really difficult to get the things dead straight. So I'm going to put the tap in the drill chuck here and get it started. It won't be any good for tapping it all the way because it takes such a lot of force, but just to get the tap started. So now I'll just continue with the handheld tapping tool. Okay, you may have seen me do this before, so I'll just do it quickly. I'm going to put in the 3 chuck drawers, find number 1, just here, and turn it around until we can see the spiral appear. There's the beginning of the spiral just starting. So I want this to be picked up first, since it's number 1, and go around this way. Okay, so now for the next stage is do a little bit of turning. I've got this bar here ready, bit of cruddy looking brass bar, and I'm going to make a whole lot of little steps that will screw onto here on the chuck, indicating the... Never mind. Let's see. Now each of these has to be drilled to the right depth. I'll make at least 2, maybe 3 sets. Probably 3 wouldn't be a bad idea. It's going to face off the end. Center drill. Do a small drill right through for the sides of the screw, and then a larger one for the head of the screw, for the cap head. That'll go to within 1/8 of an inch of the end of each piece of bar. Okay, making this up as I go along. I don't need the gear train going. I'll keep the noise down. Speaking of which, put my goggles on, put my earmuffs on. I like to put a centre drill in first because ordinary drills, especially small ones like this, are likely to bend and twist around and sort of wiggle when you're trying to get it centered properly, and it will end up putting the hole in the wrong place if you're not careful.
If I turn the tailstock back past half an inch, it pops the drill out, the chuck out. And if you don't need to remove the chuck, I just need to remove the drill.
And find a drill that's going to fit this thread, which it's a 4mm. It's a 4mm should be fine. 3.9 in diameter, 4mm drill. And since we're going to make a lot of these, I could pass the drill right in, right through. Put some cutting oil on it. And I forgot to decide how long to make it. 22mm, so make it 21. Now we know that's a 4mm drill screw, but I don't know the cap sizes. It says 6.08. I think I better make it a 6.5mm hole for the cap to go in. Now, since I can't go all the way to 0 without popping the chuck out, I have to go to the half-inch mark. And it's calibrated in inches, of course, and we're working everything else in millimeters. I want this to go within about 1/8 of an inch of the end. 21 30 seconds. 20 30 seconds would be 10/16, which is 5/8. I'll go for 5/8. Here's my parting tool. Doesn't have to stick out very far. Loosen off the post. The post has a slot in it and bends slightly when you tighten it up, and clamps down on the tool, so that's all it holds it in. Remember, it's got to go in upside down. And just line it up by eye. Small cut like this is nothing like the 3-inch diameter bar I was cutting this afternoon. Got to watch this and make sure it doesn't interfere with the chuck. And I want to get 21mm. Ow! I managed to stick that those vernier calipers under my fingernail. Ouch. Okay. This doesn't have an adjustable centre on this tool post, which is one drawback, but so far it's not really been much of an issue. And something else I forgot to do is to clamp the carriage. I have to get back on the right spot. Looks like it. Put a nut under here, under the compound slide for clamping the carriage. Okay, that'll prevent some of the movement. There's a hole in the middle, so it made it cut off very easily and neatly. Okay, just need to break off that little piece. So now our cap screw will drop in here nicely, hopefully. Oh, what did I do there? Did I use a 6.5? Doesn't look like I gave it enough clearance. Perhaps my calipers weren't zeroed properly. It's now saying 6.75, so I'm going to have to use a 7mm. Okay, so I'll put that back in the truck and we'll draw a 7mm hole in it, and that should do the trick. We have to take the jaws out. You don't want to just put the drawers halfway out, because if they haven't got any load on them, they're inclined to come loose and come flying out at high speed, which is of course dangerous. So we have to make sure we take the drawers right out. I haven't got them all exactly the same height actually, but that's the idea of doing this process, is to make sure is to even them all out. Yes, cutting on two of them, but not the third one. Good. So now we know they're all exactly the same height, and so they'll serve as a reference for putting our discs on. Okay, so now we can put the jaws back in. Go to number 1, which is right here. There it is. Now, when I prepared these, I started with a 6-inch length of this 3-inch solid brass bar, and turned the end off flat, drilled a hole, and then parted it off with a parting tool and left this piece. But it means that this side is rough and needs facing and the thickness adjusting, and this is a very convenient way of mounting these thin discs on the chuck and getting them nice and straight. Now I could check that with the dial gauge, but actually I don't know that the surface is actually correct, so this is actually a better way of doing it, because we'll find this face will now be parallel with that face. So that should be perfect.
If you shut all the doors, I'm going to put the dryer on and get warm in here.
Oh yeah. I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to the video.
Oh, I see. What you're talking to me.